Well, I can't deny I crashed on start there. The usual beginning to a stream. We're in a field in Belgium, in the Huey, and hopefully everything is okay. You got the sound. Good to see you. Good to see there's a few people already in. Good to see. I can see the guy at the back is there. Actually, we could just check you, see what you're wearing today. Good morning. You're in the snazzy blue. Okay, so hopefully a few people will be joining as we poodle along. Now, we are, as I say, we're in South Belgium. By the way, thank you very much to all the people who are following. This is a goal thing that I've got on Twitch, so you can follow me live on Twitch. I'm also on YouTube, and I see that there's a few new YouTube subscribers out there, so hello to you. I'd like to thank everyone who's started to understand what we're trying to achieve on this channel. It is a young channel, and I have been doing teething troubles, trying to sort of get the sort of flow of what we're talking about. And I can see that a lot of people come onto the stream and then disappear. So I'm trying to get the right category, because I think a lot of the times people are coming on wanting Flight Simulator and then realizing it's a bit more sort of history. But for those people who, I think there's 30 of us now on YouTube who are subscribed. I hope you're enjoying this and you understand what we're trying to do here. So for anybody who is new and joining in, my name is Simon. The channel's called Flight Past. It's because it uses flight to look at the past, and it was an idea I got last year when Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 came over to the PlayStation. I was listening a lot of the time whilst I was flying on the console, listening to history podcasts and things like Rest is History or We Have Ways of Making You Talk podcast. And I thought it would be... and I would go around and I would try and find these places that they were talking about on the simulator. So I just thought it was sounded like a good idea to combine the two. And by using the Huey in a lot of places, it depends on what we're doing, but if we're talking about battlefields itself, then the Huey is a great aircraft to use. If we're talking longer distances, we did D-Day playlist, and so you were using the Dakota a lot in that. And so it depends on the sort of what we're talking about, the sort of aircraft that we'll be using. But my favorite is this Huey, because I've got the PlayStation and I can use the gyro on the PlayStation controller to control. You can see that I'm controlling it with the with the controller. So that gives me a free hand over here to be able to look at my notes and things like that. And so what we've been doing, as I say, we've been looking at different history. I started off on D-Day, so I was just looking at the first 24 hours of D-Day. And I then moved over to doing the Waterloo campaign. And there's a few other little playlists you'll find on YouTube at the moment. Go and have a look at that. And because it's all been a bit of a trial and error, and I'm trying to sort of get my sort of pattern in, we will go back maybe and see a few of these other things we've done before. But where are we now? Well, we're in Waterloo. We're at Waterloo. We've been following Napoleon from Elba all the way up to Paris. He set sail from Elbe, I believe it was on the 28th of February. He arrives at the Gulf of Juan on the 1st of March. And by the 20th of March, he'd been carried up the steps at the Palace at Tuileries in Paris. He sends out a load of letters to sovereigns saying that he's going to be a good boy and, please don't attack me and I will try to sort of do better. But they just send the letter back. And in fact, the British Prime Minister refuses to allow the Prince Regent to open the letter. He just sends it back unanswered. And unopened and unanswered. So Napoleon's got a domestic crisis going on back in France. The problems of the Bourbon monarchy had after basically 5 years of war was trying to go from a war footing economy to a peace economy. And of course, just coming back, Napoleon still had all these issues to deal with. He had revolts in the Vendée, which is the sort of western side of France. There was problems down in Provence and in Marseille area. So he had a lot of issues back at home. And so he kind of like, there's reflections on, say, today's, in fact, reflections on any struggling domestically leadership, is that if they can't solve the problems domestically, they will try to distract with a foreign policy. And Napoleon believes that his way to win over the people of France again behind him is to go on the offensive. And he needs to do this quickly because the Allies, we've got the Anglo-Dutch up here to the south of Brussels. This weather is closing in here. This is live weather, by the way, in Belgium. And you've got the Prussians up here. And individually, the French can probably defeat one or other of the armies. And we have seen that they've defeated already the Prussians at Ligny. But together, if the armies of Prussia and the Anglo-Dutch come together, then it will be difficult for Napoleon to defeat them. So he's trying to do this classic sort of Napoleon thing where he pins one army using a portion of his army and then goes against the other one at the same time. And he's done that, or he believes he's done that. He believes he's at Ligny, he believes he pinned Wellington at Quatre Bras, and as he dealt with the Prussians, and now he's got Grouchy trying to sort of pin the Prussians away from Wellington here, and then he's going to now go on the offensive here. The problem is this hasn't worked out, and as we left it in the last stream, we found out, Napoleon found out there was rumours, or a letter had arrived from Grouchy saying that he believed at least one corps had gone to Wavre, and now Wavre is within contact distance of the ridge at Mont Saint Jean, and so this is a worry for Napoleon. He needs now, if this is true, it shouldn't be catastrophic as long as he can get this battle over and done with. He actually therefore wants Wellington to stand here if he can, but he needs to attack quickly. And of course the problem that happens is that one, he's still got his troops coming up this road from Charleroi, still coming up. You've got the Corps of Rail and D'Erlon still trying to make it up this road, and the conditions of the 17th and 18th, the morning of the 18th of June, have not been good. There's been thunderstorms and rain, and so this means that the ability to go cross country, to move up troops cross country, has been curtailed, at least. Right, so how we do this thing? Well, we're circling at the moment around the battlefield. You can see it below us here, and what we'll do is we'll stay in the helicopter for as much as we can. If the weather closes in too much, I will change it so that we can see. But at the moment, it's okay. We will jump out of the helicopter when we need to get down and low and talk about different aspects. But we left last time. We were talking about the troops are waking up in the morning, and Wellington has received news from Blucher, that he will come to his aid with probably more than he could hope for. At least 3 corps of Prussians will be on their way. And Napoleon is over here, and he's as I say, he understands that the job needs to be done quickly. Now, this weather to me is getting a little bit too thick. I'm going to have to change this because we won't be able to see what's going on. So let me. I hate to do this, but it does mean. Let's just switch that off, and we can go to. Let's have some clouds at least. That'll do. Actually, just do let's do some scattered clouds. There we go. I'll put it back in a minute. Right, so let's begin the story. So if you're new to the channel as well, you're the co-pilot. Your messages will appear on the left. So if I'm crashing or going the wrong way, you can let me know. And of course, we've got the head-up display at the top will show you the subject that we're talking about is on the top left. In the middle is where we currently are, and on the right is the date that we're talking about. Feel free to join in. Feel free to say if I've got something wrong, or there's a flashing light that needs to be adjusted or something like that. And please do not be embarrassed if you think it's a simple question, or you've heard something and you're worried that we might have mentioned it. It's always great to mention these things again if we have to. And if you think that there's something that's wrong, or you've got some better information, and share it with the group, and we can all discuss it. Don't worry about sources. You know, if you say I heard that some guy in the pub called Bernard mentioned this, then we can still chat about it here. It's not a history lecture or anything like that. It's just I'm just flying a helicopter online talking about Waterloo. Right, so let's start. Let's start. 4 o'clock in the morning, and Captain Cavalier Mercer would wake up on this day, and he calls it the memorable day. And he reports that his non-commissioned officer returns from a place called Longveld, with a supply of ammunition. So the ammunition has got through the woods of the Sogne, and is arriving on the battlefield. He says he describes the roads at 4 o'clock in the morning are crowded with wagons. Many of them overturned or pushed off the road, plundered with ammunition and supplies. But basically, if a wagon is in the way, it's pushed off the road, the stripped of its supplies, and it's given out to the troops. And at the same time, at 4 o'clock in the morning, Bulu's 4th Corps of the Prussians are breaking camp at the town of Wavre. So let's point you in the direction of Wavre. Wavre is basically in this direction here, where the white dot is. So the Prussians are over there, and they're trying to get across to the battlefield here at the ridge at Mont Saint-Jean, where Wellington says he will stand if they come to his support. And what Captain Mercer's been describing just now is that this green area here to the north of Waterloo was known as the Forest of Soignes, and it didn't have all these houses, as you can see here, but the ammunition was coming down, and you've basically got the road going up, and you can see Brussels up here in the distance. Now, Captain Mercer reports at this time, this is 4 o'clock in the morning, he says that the rain has started to slacken. It's now becoming a drizzle. And he says the regimental trumpeteers would begin to blow their reveille, I think is the word. And that echoes up and down the line. And he remembers thinking that this has no thought for stealth. It was the way that they were blowing their trumpets and stuff like that would, he says, was revealing the Allied positions along this line. How much you could actually tell from the French side, but all along this line here. So we're flying now along the ridge of Mont Saint-Jean, and the troops, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, the rain's just starting to turn to drizzle, and you can hear the trumpets of the morning reveille occurring all the way along this line here. Now, fodder for the horses, he says, was hard to get hold of, because the quartermasters were just concentrating on bringing up ammunition at this time. So for Napoleonic armies, in the morning there's kind of a routine drill that goes through for the regiments. They're stood to, and they wait until the light is sufficient to make sure that there's no dawn attack. And then when satisfied that there was no dawn attack, the order was then passed around to stand down. And then armours set up, muster reports are made to see basically who's deserted, if anyone's deserted in the night. And the armourers start setting up shop to fix muskets, sharpen swords, service weapons, that sort of stuff. The crops that you see today were slightly different to what you got back in 1815 in the sense that they were the rye and was a lot higher in that time. So there was a lot of this corn was being flattened to get cut for the horses. And so we're looking here at around about 80,000 troops of Wellington's army. But over here, there's a couple of places called Hal and Tubize. We'll look over in this direction here. And this was because I think Wellington, and I might get this wrong, I can't remember, but he has around about 10,000 troops over here because he's still paranoid about his right flank, that Napoleon would try to turn him away from his supply lines, which was Ostend and Antwerp. So let's just come around again. %50 of the troops in Wellington's line were British, estimated, but the French had a superiority of guns, and they had the initiative in the sense that they could pick where they wanted to attack Wellington on his line and concentrate. Again, with the artillery, Wellington had about 150 guns, but again, he didn't really have the ability to concentrate his guns. Unlike Napoleon, he could concentrate his batteries where he wanted to have the biggest effect. So again, Napoleon had an advantage in that sense. But he would use someone like Captain Cavalier Mercer's Royal Horse Artillery to ride along this line and to plug any points where he felt that there was the maximum amount of stress. All along this line then, it's in the morning. We're talking about 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. Once that reveille's happened, you then get this sort of sound of muskets being fired, and it's not because they're firing at anything, they're just discharging their weapons in order to clean them, make sure that they're all they're firing locks and loosed, and make sure that their weapons are in good working order. There is reports at the time that even though the conditions are so bad, it's been raining all night long, many officers take the chance to shave and put on a clean shirt, you know, and because of the dampness of the conditions, gunpowder. A lot of gunpowder is actually used as a primer for their bonfires to keep themselves warm, campfires. Now, one of the advantages, of course, of the rain is that they managed to collect a lot of water. So you got to remember these things, that all water could be a difficult thing to collect, and at this time it means that most of the soldiers along the line will have a full canteen of water. And we've got a description here from a Sergeant Major Cotton. Now, and what I love about the Napoleonic Wars is that the common soldier, the lower ranks, had got to a stage of literacy that they could actually write about their experiences, and a lot of these I've got in a collection, the Waterloo collections, and other primary sources. And one of these guys said his name was Sergeant Major Cotton, and he describes, he says, and I quote, "At this time there was a continual irregular popping along the line, not unlike a skirmish, occasioned by those who were cleaning their firearms, discharging them when practical, which was more expeditious and satisfactory than drawing the charges." So he's saying that they should be pulling the musket balls out of the weapons, but they're not, they're just firing them. He describes what the sound of 70,000 men awakening The buzzing resembled the distant roar of the sea against a rocky coast. Kind of cool. He describes how he, Sergeant Wheeler, it's a different guy. Sergeant Wheeler describes how his company was moved out of the mud at daybreak and being posted near some houses, and they would basically raid this house, take the doors, windows, shutters, furniture in order to make fires. And they were, but they weren't allowed to enjoy these fires for long, as by 8 a.m. his brigade was expected to be in position. Lieutenant Pratt, he was the 30th Regiment. He wrote a letter, 1835 he wrote it, so 20 years after the event. He said he describes this morning as being dismal, dreary, and he remembers getting the cry to stand to your arms was around about 11 o'clock in the morning. And he again goes on to describe the general discharge and drawing of flintlocks immediately took place. And because basically the rain has made them almost impossible to fire. 6 o'clock in the morning then, and Captain Mercer describes how he sees the French on the opposite hill. And so we're going to... This is the opposite hill here. In fact, what we'll do is just quickly jump out, and we'll show you the lay of the land. So we believe Captain Mercer's Royal Horse Artillery was possibly in this area here, somewhere along this line here. And this is the view that he could see. And when he talks about it, remember that this pile of dirt here should really be on this ridge. But this is the sort of view that he would have. So when he's talking about the opposite hill, that's what he's talking about over there. He says that he could see the French on the opposite side of the hill, and it was quiet. They were moving around individually. They weren't moving around in any formation, so there was no threat at this time of morning attack. He describes as well, so he says, he talks about La Haye Sainte, which is this building here, so maybe actually he was around this area. And he describes the advanced post and vedettes in the valley just below La Haye Sainte was quiet. So presumably what we have is that the French have actually come down and they're almost in this sort of area here. Ready to attack from this position. Some of them, anyway, possible skirmishers or just advanced sort of reconnaissance posts type thing. He then describes how he then returns to a farmhouse behind the ridge, presumably somewhere in this area around here somewhere. So even at this time, so this is 6 o'clock in the morning, they weren't certain of what they would be doing today. Rumours were going around Mercer's troop to say that they believe that they will be continuing their withdrawal towards Brussels on this day. But what actually begins to happen is that the British troops will start to begin to take up their positions along this this ridge. It's believed around about this time Wellington himself would ride along his position here, getting a good idea of what he's got, and he begins to, it's described, to start supervising the arrangements of his battlefield. So he's got, we believe, possibly around about 5 o'clock in the morning, he's received confirmation from Blucher that he will come to his support here, and he then decides that this will be the place for him to stand. Right, on that note then, I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back just after this break. So if you're watching on Twitch or YouTube Live, we will be back in a couple of minutes, and we will start with Wellington's order of the day. Hello, welcome back to Flight Past. My name's Simon. We're over Waterloo, and we left you in the last part with Wellington saying, receiving the information from Blucher that he's going to come to his support. And so even though by around about 6 o'clock in the morning, Captain Mercer said that they weren't sure whether they were going to carry on to Brussels that day or stay here, it then turns out that Wellington says, right, we're going to stand. And he sends out the order of the day. And the order of the day was to cover and protect our batteries, to establish ourselves at all times as much in advance as might be compatible with prudence. So this is the order of the day of the Royal Horse Artillery, I should point out. This was written by Lieutenant Pratt. So it's to cover and protect our batteries, to establish ourselves at all times as much in advance as might be compatible with prudence, to preserve considerable intervals between our extended files for greater security from the fire of the enemy's batteries, to show obstinate resistance against infantry of the same description, but to attempt no formation or offer a useless opposition to the charges of cavalry, but to retire in time upon the squares in our rear, moving in a direct line without any reference to regiments or nations, and when the charge is repulsed, to resume our ground. And that's what the order of the day is for the batteries. So in modern English, what does that mean? They are basically, if we're coming towards this ridge now, let's just pause here, jump out. What they're saying is that they are going to try and put their guns as far forward as necessary and prudent to be. So they need to obviously be able to see their target. So, in this sort of positions along this front of the ridge. And they are to not clump together because they're going to be facing the Grand Battery of Napoleon. And of course, even though Wellington's got 150 guns along here, the Grand Battery is probably more like double that amount, but they also got the ability to concentrate where they want it to be. Whereas Wellington's artillery haven't got the option to concentrate anywhere. And they will then give enough space in between each other so they're not an obvious target, and it makes it more harder for the French artillery to pinpoint them. And then they will fall back essentially into the squares or behind. If it's cavalry, they'll behind the infantry. They won't care whether it's what regiment it is. It's just they will go directly to the nearest one. So that's their order of the day. Napoleon at this time is nowhere near ready for a battle. The bulk of his armies are actually have bivouacked all the way down this road towards Genappe and eventually Quatre Bras. They're coming up this road here. There's a bottleneck, remember, at Genappe, trying to get through. And the order that Soult, Napoleon's chief of staff, gives is that they need to come up here and get into position by around about 9 o'clock in the morning. But that wasn't possible. And as we know, the weather of the previous evening meant that this the conditions of the battlefield was too wet, and they needed to let it dry out a bit. Now, interesting enough about this battlefield is, relatively speaking, of the day, it's actually smaller than most other battlefields. I mean, if you think about even just Ligny in terms of the size, it's relatively small, and that suits Wellington's needs. He needs to be able to concentrate his lesser forces in a smaller area. So this size of the battlefield is actually a good thing for Wellington. And as we'll see later as well, the concentration of the forces means this is one of the bloodiest battles we'll see because the actual concentration of the fighting in this area is so high. Now, I'm not sure we can see this, but there's a this modern road might be cutting through, but over here it had a sunken kind of way. It doesn't look like it. We can't really see this, can we? There was a sort of a sunken track over this side, kind of protects its right flank. The valley between the two armies is around about a kilometre across. And as you can see, it subtly undulates to allow it's kind of it looks flat and slightly undulating, but there is actually a significant slope. The geology of the field is described as a silty loam, and when wet, this really clogs together. That sort of mud that sticks to your wellies kind of vibe. So it makes it difficult to maneuver your artillery through, especially down in these low areas where the water accumulates more. And this over here is, I think it's described as the Paris Wood, and this is where the Prussians will be advancing from. And this Paris Wood here across to Braine-l'Alleud over here is approximately 4 miles, just to get the perspective. Now, we'll just jump back into the helicopter and do a bit more flying. We'll go over now to Napoleon's headquarters. Now, Napoleon's headquarters was in a farmhouse called Le Caillou, and it's believed here that around about this time, 9 o'clock in the morning, Napoleon's having a breakfast, and Soult suggests to Napoleon that Grouchy B recalls. It's an interesting observation. I can't remember who made it, and this is when Napoleon turns to him and says to his the marshals around his table, his generals, he says, just because you've been beaten by Wellington, you think he's a good general. I tell you, Wellington is a bad general, the English are bad troops, and this affair is little more than eating breakfast. Well, we can wonder whether that was an actual true statement or not, or just added on later. But this here is the where the dot is right now is the farmhouse of Le Caillou. And as you can see then, if you look back up there, you're talking probably a kilometre or a kilometre and a half away from the French front line. And that's something that's very interesting as well, is that Wellington tends to be the general that's, I would say, he's more hands-on. He doesn't like to delegate. We saw his interaction with Uxbridge in the previous evening. He likes to sort of observe, be close to the action. He's always in the thick of the action. He's always where the crisis point is, and he's always writing little notes to be sent off to different people. Whereas Napoleon tends to be a little more. He feels like more. I'm the man who got us to this position. Now you deal with it. So he's more of a strategic leader rather than a tactical leader, especially at this time in his career. Now, it's believed that Napoleon believes that is delighted to find out that Wellington hasn't left in the night or in the early morning, and that he intends to stand here. And it's for a number of reasons. One of them is this wood here. He's convinced that this is a bad position because this wood to Wellington's rear would basically mean that any withdrawal from this battlefield will now be in a state of chaos, because it's difficult to maintain order through woods. And although he has got the message that the Prussians' corps might be in Wavre, he says at this time that he doesn't think they'll be able to get to here in time. Now, let's talk about the battlefield itself. In fact, we'll probably jump out at this point. So yes, we've got the battle. We've got the woods of the Bois Soigné behind here. None of these buildings were here, and you've got the classic Wellington reverse slope. Excuse me. So all this area here is dead ground in relative terms to what Napoleon can see. So from down there, the French can't see the British numbers up here. What you've got is a ridge, as I say, running east to west. Basically follow this road here. This is it's known as the Sunken Lane. It's the Olhain road. It goes to a place called Olhain this way, and all along this ridge is essentially the Anglo-Dutch position. And we know that Wellington knew about this position, that he's had it surveyed. The British Signal Corps have been out here surveying it, and when it comes out of the woods of the Bois de Soigné, it's the best position, first best position south of those woods, on the way towards Charleroi. So he would have been aware of this position, and it's a fortunate position as well, in the sense that it has some very good buildings in strategic positions. So, one, the troops can be behind here on this reverse slope. It also means his supplies are back here, his ammunition wagons are back here, and they're all protected from one of the key elements of the French army is its Grand Battery. It's basically what you can expect is, and Wellington will know this, the tactics of the French will be to bombard points on the line, concentrating points on the line, and to knock and to shake up the infantry, try and take out any batteries and all that sort of stuff. He'll then possibly do some side action. He'll attack some of the flanks, and essentially to draw reserves away from the centre, and then they will just use the Imperial Guard essentially to be the battering ram to go for the point of weakness on the line, like we saw in Ligny, and they did the same thing. They had two corps of infantry. They were attacking. The position of weakness was found, and then the Imperial Guard moved into that position. So that's what they're going to expect. So having these troops behind a ridge like this means that the French are no longer in a position to see where the strengths and weaknesses are. So they've got to come up this slope to see it. And what we then get as well is this a sort of fortuitous number of buildings. We have the Chateau of Hougoumont on the right-hand side. So this is a building almost fortified in itself, where it's got walls anyway, and it's surrounded by trees. It's got an orchard, but it's got a reasonably defensive position on his right flank forward of the slope. And in the middle, he's got the same thing. He's got a farm It's got a quadrangle. It's easily defended, and this is La Haye Sainte, and this is again forward of the slope. So you've got two strong positions now that are going to have to, and all these strong positions are going to be narrowing the front that the French can actually attack on. And so it makes it easier to defend this section with less troops, because you're narrowing the distances involved. And then right on the left-hand side, you could argue this is the weaker side, but there is a number of, as you can see, there's a hamlet here. It's called Papelotte. It's kind of a cluster of buildings. It's not so good in terms of defense as the other two positions, but it's enough. It's a place that it makes it difficult to come through here. It's not something that it would be easier if these were all open fields on this side. But remember, this side anyway is the side right next to the wood of Paris Wood, and this is where the Prussians will be coming through. So in a sense, this would be not so much a priority for Wellington, and he wouldn't post so many troops onto this side. And the reason why he wouldn't care so much about that, because if the French wanted to try to outflank him on his left, or basically come around this way, try to get up onto the ridge here and come up this way, they now are exposed to the Prussians coming out of the woods behind them. So it makes it a very risky business for the French to try to push an attack on the right-hand side. There will definitely be a possibility that the Prussians will appear on their flank. Now, so from the position that we see then here, then I think we have two generals who know each other. Probably Wellington knows Napoleon a little bit better. And Wellington is going to be aware of Napoleon's tactics. He's going to be aware that his flanks are going to be threatened, but he's going to have to try to resist the urge to support the flanks too much. He needs to make sure that they hold, but hold with the minimum amount of troops moving from his reserve in the centre to the flanks, because I'm sure he is aware of the tactics of Napoleon, and that it's basically where the Imperial Guard come at the end of the day will be the crisis point, and everything else before that time is just an attempt to move reserves away from the point where the Imperial Guard will eventually attack. There's a guy, I'll just finish here. And quote you from this guy here. His name's Henri Houssaye, French 19th century historian, and he describes this terrain at the time. He says that he's describing basically this view here. And he says, as seen from La Belle Alliance, the road to Brussels, which goes up and down again in a straight line, seems very steep, but it's an illusion of perspective. In reality, the inclination of the slope is not very great. A horseman can ascend it at an even gallop without straining his horse or putting it out of breath. However, to the right as well as to the left of the road, the ground is extremely uneven and in many places becomes steep. It is an infinite succession of mounds and hollows, of depressions and banks, of furrows and hillocks. Nevertheless, when viewed from a height, the double valley has the aspect of a plain extended without any marked depressions between two low hills. And he says it's necessary to walk over the ground to perceive the constantly undulating formations of the ground, similar to the billows of a swelling sea. So it's very subtle ground, and maybe over the course of a couple of centuries, the constant ploughing. But you can see here, look at that slope there. You wouldn't see that, but that is actually quite a mound, and you can see that you don't need it to be too. There again, there's another dip here. You wouldn't notice that, but that puts you into some dead ground. And coming back up, we get to the top here, so you can see that sort of undulation. It's not even just one valley. It's almost as you say, it's like a sea, a sort of a swelling sea. Really cool. And again, you can see this dips and bumps, and now of course this mound here has taken some of this material, but if we pull away, you can sort of see what it is that Henri Husset is saying. Right, okay. What I'll do then, I'll take a quick break here, and when I get back, we will continue talking about the battlefield. We'll talk about start talking about the positions that the original troops take up, and yep. So we'll be gone for a couple of minutes, and so don't go away if you're on Twitch or if you're on YouTube. If you're enjoying this sort of stuff, then please give a like and subscribe. It is slow, I know. It's just a chat. So join me in a couple of minutes, and we will talk about where Wellington and Napoleon positioned their troops prior to the battle. position as it enters. Magical, non-verbal suggestion. Placing the subject into hypnotic trance. Okay, welcome back. This is Simon, this is Flight Past, and good to see you all today. We are at the Battle of Waterloo, and we are going to be talking about the positions that Wellington will put his troops prior to the battle. Now, we talked about the left-hand side of his position over here in the hamlets of La Haye and Papelotte. This is going to be slightly less populated for him. He's going to be concentrating here in his center and his right. Now remember, the troops, we're talking kind of parity in numbers. And so you would think that in those terms, maybe the defensive position would be the advantage. But you've got to remember that the French were a higher proportion of veterans. Wellington's army is an amalgamation of English, Scottish, German, Belgium, Dutch, Brunswickers, Nassau's, all these sort of ones. Now, we know that some of these units have performed pretty well. Remember Papontia and Chasseurs Dutch at Quatre Bras. But I don't think Wellington had much confidence in those units. And so his main veteran army is essentially the first two nationalities, which were the British and the Germans, elements of his army. Some of his own troops as well, they were not even his main regular veterans from the peninsula. A lot of those troops have been moved over to North America. And so we are talking here more of the 2nd battalions of the regiments. And so there's not as many of his Peninsula veterans as you may have thought. Many of the troops he has actually under his command have also been previously under Napoleon's command, so he does get a number of desertions during the course of this campaign. And so what we do find is that a number of the Wellington's troops who are beyond this ridge up here, they're actually going to be troops being fired on for the first time. And in some respects, that can be an advantage if you don't know what's going to happen. And the Duke of Wellington actually says in his memoirs that if he had his Peninsular Army here on the day, then he would have swept Napoleon off the battlefield within a couple of hours. Now, Kincaid, he's one of the 95th Rifles. They were here at this sandpit. He describes the army as a bad army. He said there was foreign auxiliaries who constituted more than half our numerical strength, and with some exceptions, were little better than a new militia, a body without a soul, or like an inflated pillow, and that gives to the touch and resumes its shape again when the pressure ceases. And he mentions as well there's many people who went completely clear of the field, and all they were doing was seen plundering the supply wagons behind. Wellington run, as we talked about in the previous one, he has done an inspection run along his position here, and he's riding, by the way, his horse called Copenhagen. It's a chestnut horse, one that he used a lot in the Peninsular War. It was bred from I think it's called a Rutland Arabian. And basically performs very well under fire, and it has a very good stamina. That's Copenhagen, his horse. And remember, the other thing as well, let's talk about what he was wearing. You know, got a gentleman, but Wellington he never really wears a uniform. He prefers a blue coat. He's got buckskin breeches on and boots. He's got his cocked hat, and sometimes wears these sort of cockades on his lapel. These are these ones. They're like there's one from King George, and then the smaller ones that he got from battles in Portugal and Spain. Now, the relationship between Wellington and his men is, let's put it called respectful, is the word. A cool respect. He's seen, I think, just it's one of those ones where you know where you stand with Wellington. He does inspire confidence in his troops. He is trusted with his dispositions and his defensive positions. he fights with his men. He's always with his men at crisis points. He doesn't get the adulation, of course, that Napoleon gets, but there is a respectful nod to him by the troops. I mean, this is Napoleon is the one who will go out and receive the Vive le Empereurs and all this sort of stuff. The Duke didn't like that at all. He wouldn't allow cheering, because he believed that if you allow cheering at one point, then it allows the reverse to happen if things are not going so well. And of course, Napoleon would be over here. He would be reviewing his troops to the cries of "Vive l'Empereur" and all this sort of stuff, all being very French. The horses, again, is one of those details we don't really think about, but the horses were not the same back in 1815. They tended to be more compact, kind of, they called it an Irish stock. Talking about horses, the Scots Greys, very famous in this part of the Union Brigade. They would be in this area here, on the crossroads. And by the way, so they would have grey horses, but that wasn't the reason why they were called Scots Greys. I think the name comes from the grey cloth that the uniform was made from, and then they were dyed. And they were reporting that at this time as well, because of the rain, all the dye was washing out. And they had a bearskin hat, and that was a nod to the victory over the French at the during the 7 Years' War. So yeah, the horses were only about 15 hands high. And in general as well, the uniforms of the Allied Army, there was a lot of variation. So of course you've got the British, who are predominantly in red, but then you did have elements of the British Army. The 95th Rifles were in this little dark green. Now the problems came with the Dutch and the Belgian troops, because they tended to wear blue coats, though they did have a distinctive orange sort of facing on them. The King's German Legion wore green. But what we do find a lot of the time is that when the Dutch and Belgians are posted, especially say over here at Papelotte, their colour of their uniform, they get mistaken for being French and get fired upon. So there's many cases in this campaign where the Belgians and the Dutch get mistaken for French at some point by the Prussians or the British. So predominantly, then, when we talk about the Brunswickers and the 95th Rifles, they're placed in these sort of forward positions. We're talking here at the Sandpit and La Haison. They're using rifles. They're here to break up any units that are trying to sort of come around here. It makes this front position very difficult to bypass. If you come this way, you'll get fired upon, and the same on this way if you get too close. So it concentrates the army, and these guys they're going to be trying to fight dirty. They're going to be aiming for officers, sergeants, key personnel in these units, the ones who are basically there to sort of keep cohesion. They're going to be target. They're also going to be trying to stop any of the Grand Battery getting too close, and they will try and take out the artillerymen as well. And they're also here to try to break up the French tirailleurs, who are the equivalent skirmishers. So there will usually be a cloud of skirmishers in front of these French, and these guys here will be trying to take them out as well. Now, in terms of strength, then the left-hand side over here, Wellington will give this area, he will tend to give it to a weaker position, what he believes are weaker troops. So the Belgian and the Dutch forces are concentrated on this area there, but he sprinkles amongst them stronger units that he can trust. One of the examples over here is he gives the Prince, the Duke of Saxe-Weimar, Bernard. Remember him? He was the guy who was down at Quatre Bras, and he's given the responsibility of this section of his flank, and that's quite a leap of trust for Wellington, giving his whole left flank sort of the responsibility of someone who only a few years before had been fighting for Napoleon. And then he has his main concentration of his trusted troops here, and he puts four companies of the guard here at Hougoumont, and that shows you immediately where his thoughts are in defense, that putting his best troops in here is essentially saying that he does not want to be turned on his right flank. And you can see through the course of the battle that he, if anything, will send reinforcements to his right, and he's not so concerned about his left. So his major concern is always his right flank, essentially, and he's hoping that the Prussians will come up this ridge to help on this side. Let's jump in a helicopter. We haven't done some flying for a bit. Oh, hello. Orel, hello, good morning. I'm lacking the bigger picture. Prussia fought with Napoleon before, so they would have had intimate knowledge of the tactics. They didn't fight with Napoleon before. There was... I haven't done the previous parts of Napoleonic War. They weren't... The Prussians weren't. If I did mention... Did I mention that? It's more the Belgians had fought with Napoleon before. They were all pretty... by this time, 25 years of fighting, they were all very familiar with their enemies' tactics. There wasn't much innovation by this time in terms of actual field tactics. They all had their sort of ways of fighting, essentially. So they were very aware of what was going on. I don't think Napoleon had faced British line infantry before in any place, and I don't think that sort of reverse slope mentality his marshals and generals definitely had. No, I don't think the Prussians had fought with Napoleon at any point. But some of these minor nations had changed sides. So the Belgians had literally been fighting with the French army a couple of years before, and then they'd been amalgamated into the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and they were then part of the Allied army. And a lot of the distrust was that there was some worries that they would go across to the other side, and we saw it on one of the occasions the other way round when the General Beaumont of the French was approaching Charleroi and actually rode across to the Allies. So we have those sort of minor desertions happening all the time. We actually get a lot of desertions within the actual battle itself. We'll come up across examples of some French guys just riding up and saying "Vive le roi" and just basically coming across during the battle. If that's what you mean, I might have missaid something there concerning the Prussians. The other argument, of course, is that these guys have come across, they had been fighting for Napoleon a couple of years ago, and they're part of the Allied army. And I would argue a lot of the cases, they actually fight harder than they would normally do. They're trying to almost prove their now loyalty to their new master. We'll also see, by the way, not want to just say about the Belgians, but there are, I think it's the Duke of Cumberland. He just rides off the battlefield with British troops. He just rides them off. He just decides that he doesn't want anything to do with this, and he's forever known as this guy who just walked off the battlefield with his cavalry. So there was weak elements in the British elements as well as everywhere else. But you've got to remember a lot of these, there's a different systems to the army. The British army was a veteran professional army. They weren't conscripts. So to be in the British red tunic, you would have to take in the King's shilling. Yes, you could be, peer pressured or whatever it is, but you're not a conscript. And the British government at the time wouldn't allow the British militia units to operate outside of the British Isles. So you had to be a professional soldier to be in the British Army, whereas in the Prussians and the Belgian and Dutch army, they had a form of conscription, and they did have militia, and some of them worked very well, but they tended to perform well to begin with. We saw it at Quatre Bras. We saw that they would hold these positions initially, and then they would eventually crumble quite quickly. But one of the things we did notice as well, like with the Prussian army, they're very good at sort of taking a knock. They're very good at being beaten and then reorganizing. So the German sort of ability to reorganize after a setback is one that's really, really impressive. Cool. So yeah, so we've got the guards on the left over there, and something else to remember as well is Wellington didn't have so much trust in his artillery and his cavalry. One thing that you do see in these times is that Wellington has a sort of a more of a trust with his guards, his main redcoat brigades and divisions, but when it came to the cavalry and the artillery, he didn't trust them. And with the artillery, I think it's something to do with control. I think it's something to do with like he couldn't control them so much, but he always arguing at the time that the artillery were wasting ammunition, trying to fire back on the French guns. So that was his main concern about them, that they would not, they didn't have any discipline in what they would fire at. And the second thing was the cavalry. He had no trust in the cavalry of the British Army. He just they tended to be in ill discipline. They would very brave, very I don't know what's the word. They would charge at something, but they would be terrible at reorganizing. Would charge at something, but they would be terrible at reorganizing themselves. You will hear over the course of this whole thing with the back at Quatre Bras, we had Peru's cavalry. They're doing multiple charges. They're doing multiple pressure points. They're attacking, coming back, and attacking and coming back. But the British cavalry tended to charge, lose all control, and then they would be blown for the rest of the day. And this stems back essentially to a court-martial that occurred to a guy called Colonel George Quentin. He was the commander of the 10th Hussars, and in the previous year he was charged with cowardice in the face of the enemy, because he had refused to charge. And because of that, there's this sort of culture had swept through the British cavalry that they wouldn't want to be seen as cowards, and so they tended to charge at everything. Right, let's take a break here, and we'll come back and we'll have a look then at the French deployment and see where Napoleon put his men. Welcome back to Flight Pass. My name is Simon. We're here talking about the positions of the French and the British over the course just before the Battle of Waterloo. So Aurel just said, did the side take advantage of the state of the British cavalry, like lure them into traps, keep them busy, bind them where they couldn't do much harm? I'm not sure, to be honest, about that. We will see that, of course, during the course of the battle, it wasn't so much that they were lured into. I think they kind of, when we look at the charge of the Scots Guards, they were over exuberant. I can't remember any examples beforehand of them knowing about that and actually luring them. It may have happened in smaller pockets when we're talking more about picket lines and things like that. I'm not sure about that, and if anyone does know, then let me know and let us know. We're talking about the Napoleon's position now. Interesting enough about Napoleon's way he forms up his line is that in this particular battle, he just sort of show his hand a little bit. A lot of times in other battle in the Napoleonic War, he would always have a hidden element somewhere that he didn't want his opponent to see. But he tends to here just reveal his hand. And what I mean by that is he will line up his troops in plain sight of the enemy, and that might be something to do with his need to get on with the battle, essentially. One of the arguments I have seen was that by lining up his troops so predominantly in sight, showing almost the full scale of his army, especially his non-reserve, is that he's trying to intimidate the Anglo-Dutch army on this ridge. So what he essentially does then is over here we've got Belle Alliance, and his formations are on this side of the battlefield. He'll line up the corps of de Erlon, and so they'll be on this side, and on this side of the road in this area here, he will have the corps of rail lined up. Now this is in full view of the British line. There's no attempt to pull them back behind this ridge here. He wants them to be up front and seen. And we'll find that the battery, the guns, the batteries are all lined up. Essentially, you can see this sort of ridge here. A lot of the guns are along this line here. Oh, they'll get to that line. They probably start off here, but then move forward to this sort of ridge here. And behind these positions were the reserve cavalry. Lobau's corps was coming up as well, and behind them was the Imperial Guard. With probably this is the Napoleon's headquarters here, so we would assume that the Imperial Guard will be starts off back here. Now, from they call it the Rossom Farm in this area here, Napoleon can't see the position. Essentially, you can't really see the Wellington's position from here. And so he doesn't, because of that, I think he doesn't see the way that Wellington has made his dispositions on this side. He can't see the weighting that he's given to the centre and to the his right or Napoleon's left. So he just lines up his troops equally on either side of the road. And from back here, there, essentially doesn't get a very good view of the battlefield. So a lot of the decisions on the time in the battle is made more by Ney on the actual battlefield. Now at this point, he wants to get going. He needs this battle to be over. He's brought up his troops. He's given the intimidating sort of stare down on Wellington's lines, and he wants to go, but the battle is delayed, and the insistence of Drew, who is one of the most successful officers. He was the commander of the artillery of the guard, and he said he couldn't maneuver his cannon around, and so insisted that the attack order be delayed in order to allow the ground to dry. Now, the other reason, or both reasons, was that he wanted to delay in order to get to allow Grouchy to get to the field. So he's still got hopes that maybe he can get there. So that might be another reason why he decides to delay the start. And he also needs to just make sure that his supply train and the troops are all brought up and ready to go. So there's three reasons. But I believe, and many people do, that if this battlefield was dry, he would have just gone for it right now. And we're talking possibly like 9 o'clock in the morning, he would have just attacked. And those 2 hours or so that they gained would have possibly meant that the pressure from the Prussians from this side wouldn't have been so much, and he could have used more of his reserve then to attack Wellington's centre, and then the result would have been different. Let's jump in the helicopter for a bit. The other thing as well, remember with the state of the soil, is that the effect of the bombardment of the Grand Battery is reduced. These guys will be firing up at this ridge, and with the wet ground, sodden ground, these cannonballs are just going to go embed into the ground, or the actual sort of ricochets will be deadened, and so the effect of the artillery is lessened as well. So that's another reason why they would want to delay a little bit. Now, with Wellington putting most of his troops over here behind this ridge, that obviously covers his troops from this bombardment. And the French didn't have many howitzers, so the howitzer is the gun that fires up and down rather than forwards, and so they didn't have many of those, so they couldn't impact the troops behind the slope. So in this time, Napoleon will take leave of his headquarters at Le Caillou. He gets on his horse. Now, remember, we talked about Copenhagen, the chestnut horse. So at Waterloo, Napoleon has the white Arab horse called Marengo. And he rides forwards towards La Belle Alliance and to review the positions at this time. And this is where it's believed that there's sightings of of Napoleon on his horse at this time. But he realizes that it's too wet. And he comes back and he goes to the farm at Rossomme, and he'll sit there at his table. And he'll write a dispatch to Grouchy at this time. Interesting part here was a reference to his health. There was a number of actions that he did at this time, which he delegated out to one of his engineers, and this was to go and reconnoitre over here on the left-hand side, and to find out if there was any earthworks or defensive positions over here. And it was commented at the time, I think Soult mentions it, and Soult, remember, his chief of staff. He says, well, back in the day, at the Battle of Jena and Austerlitz, this was the sort of thing that Napoleon would have done himself. He would have gone and had a look. He would have just ridden his horse over there and had a quick look. But he delegates this out to one of his chief engineers, a guy called Haxo. And so that's another indication that Napoleon doesn't have the same vigor that he had before. Now this dispatch, he writes to Grouchy. Now remember, Grouchy's written to him to say he's at a place called Walheim, and in fact let's just jump out and have a look at the map. So we are here. This is where Napoleon is, and he knows that Grouchy has managed to get over to a place called Walheim. It's in fact this place called Sartre-les-Walheim here, and he writes to Grouchy at 10 a.m. and he says in this dispatch, "You would direct your movements upon Wavre," so up to here, "so as to approach us. Act in concert with us, driving before you the Prussian army, which has taken that route, and which may have halted at Wavre, where you must arrive as soon as possible." So this is a set of orders that is full of ambiguity. This is it says you will direct your movements towards Wavre. Okay, fine. "So as to approach us." Okay, fine. act in concert with us, right? So it's getting like, what do you want me to do here? You're driving the Prussian army before you, and you will take the same route as them. And you must get there as soon as possible. So he's kind of wanting his cake and eating it. He says, I want you to follow the Prussians to Wavre. I want you to drive up this road here, get to Wavre, but I want you to stay in contact with me. So he kind of says, so what do you want? Do you want me to go to Wavre, or do you want me to come across towards you? Now this order, people will blame Grouchy for not marching to the sound of the guns, but to me that doesn't sound, come to me direct. It's more like go to Wavre. Anyway, it's one of those things that I think Grouchy sometimes gets a hard rap for this. Also, this is sent at 10 o'clock in the morning. Grouchy doesn't receive these orders until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and by that time it's impossible for Grouchy to get across to this battlefield. And you got to think Napoleon knows this. Now, the only thing he's now hoping for is that the reports that he's getting is that there's only one corps there. But he's taking a risk here. He's taking a risk because this is the one point right now, 10 o'clock in the morning, rain, battle's delayed, that he could wait, not engage here. Let's say if he doesn't engage right now, and that he decides that we're gonna just sit here for a bit and wait for Grouchy. Now the worst thing that happens is the Prussians arrive first, but that means he can then withdraw with his whole army in some sort of coordinated manner, possibly pulling back to Genappe and getting Grouchy to come across towards him there. Yes, he would have lost the ability to divide the two armies here of the Prussians and the Anglo-Dutch, but he would be in a stronger position, possibly to carry on the fight somewhere, somehow. This seems like a point where I think, though, Napoleon, the events, dear boy, the events, they've overtaken him. I don't think he's in control anymore of these events. He's got himself into this position now where he is, presumably, he can't do anything else apart from have the battle. There's too many people around him who are expecting the battle. It's too weak to retire. He has to go forwards. You've obviously got his generals saying things like, "Oh, be careful of Wellington." And he's going, "No, we're going to have to do it." He's got that Elba spirit in him again. He's got that, "Gonna do this regardless of what happens. I'm Napoleon. It's going to work out." But I'm sure the actions he's taking may be affected by his health, affected by his lack of sleep, the vigors of the whole journey that we've just been describing over these many episodes, has got to the point where it's like do or die right now, and he's just too tired to coordinate a withdrawal at this point. That's my point of view. We'll have a think about it as we go on, and if you have any other thoughts, just drop them in the comments below. Let me... So we're getting to approaching the actual beginning of the battle. We're getting around about 10 a.m., 11 o'clock in the morning. I would say also by that thing that those orders to Grouchy were so ambiguous that it's almost like they're covering his own arse. You know, it's almost like he's already started to make the excuses straight away. The other argument, of course, is that Sue's the one who's writing the orders, and Sue just doesn't sort of understand what it is that Napoleon wants, and this is why these orders are very ambiguous. 11 o'clock in the morning, then Napoleon he's reviewed his troops. He's had the bands playing Salute to the l'Empereur. He's sends out his instructions to his generals, and his plan is pretty straightforward. He chooses simple frontal assault. There's nothing subtle about it. He just thinks that he's got the troops available to battering ram Wellington. Again, this is not the genius. This isn't something that's particularly got any finesse. It's literally, I'm going to slam you with more men than you've got, straight down the middle. This is a sign, I think, again, of his impatience. He doesn't want to be doing anything too subtle. He doesn't want to do any outflanking maneuvers. You know, he doesn't want to go. He could have gone around to the left here. He doesn't want to do that at all. He needs to beat the Anglo-Dutch as quick as possible, because he knows the Prussians are coming. And again, this is another sign of his, I don't know, his lack of shine. And the shine is wearing off the Emperor. Earlier he would be more energetic, and it turns out that without their energy, he lacks the imagination, he lacks the flair, and he seems to make some dodgy decisions. Now, his strategic ability has been brilliant, obviously. I think his way he's caught Wellington out. But at this point, it gets to the actual battlefield. And of course, Napoleon isn't like Wellington. He's not this person who, Napoleon is the head of state. He's not going to be up, standing just behind his men on the front line going towards Wellington's position. So he's going to give these the tactical decisions to his second in command, who is Ney, and we'll see how that forms out. And we know already that Ney is undoubtedly a very, very brave man, very good at rallying the troops and motivating his troops. But sometimes he makes some fundamental errors of judgment. Now, Napoleon, of course, he's choosing, I would say, at this point, to ignore the threat on his right flank. We'll talk about the Prussians as we go on. But around about this time, there has been seen Prussian cavalry patrols coming out of the Paris wood. We're talking about 10 o'clock in the morning. These guys have gone ahead, the Prussians, and they're believed to be popping out of these woods here. Napoleon has failed to react to this. He could have sent even a small cavalry force to this place called Lasnay here, and blocked essentially this road here that comes up this road. Remember, the conditions are terrible, and this is the route that the Prussians will be arriving from. He could have come up here and done some effort to block this area here. Somewhere in this area, any kind of force here would have severely delayed the Prussians. He doesn't do that. So he's almost put his head in his hands there. He makes no effort as well to prepare the village of Plantois, this village here. He makes no effort at all to increase the defenses, blockade this area, or blockade the roads or anything like that. He makes no effort to do that. Again, that's something that he would have thought, at least along this road here from the church, you could definitely see that this would be a good place to prepare, but he doesn't do that. So he's still thinking that we're just going to go straight down this road here and knock Wellington out, and it'll all be all right. Okay, let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we're probably going to start. I wanted to just have a little discussion about why it is that he doesn't try to outflank this position, and then we actually get to the battle itself. I will be back in a moment, and so don't go away. Couple of minutes. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and all that sort of stuff. And we'll come back and get on with this battle. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Flight Past. My name is Simon. We are flying over the battlefield of Waterloo. And after this epic journey that we've made all the way from Elba, we're about to begin the battle. It's around about 11 o'clock in the morning of the 18th of June, 1815. We've been discussing in very, very fine detail aspects of this battle. So if you're new to the channel, you may find it gets a little bit detailed. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible, but please ask questions. Feel free to ask anything. There's no stupid questions here. There's only my stupid answers. But if you need any insight into what's going on, then feel free. Now, I am only an amateur, so I do a lot of reading on this subject, but if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you, and I'll try and work out what it is. But if other people in the chat can help out with some answers, that's great as well. I'm not assuming anything. I hope people will just find history interesting and the use of the flight simulator an interesting way of looking at it. It's for all those people basically who read a history book but have a finger on the map section flicking backwards and forwards. Right, so let's swing round here. We can see the battlefield below us. And one of the things I wanted to quickly run through just before the battle starts and is why Napoleon just goes straight up the middle here. Why does he attack this position? Why does he not go flanking to the left? And it's an interesting argument about this, and I thought we'd deal with this first. Why doesn't he maneuver left? If the Prussians are coming from his right, and he knows that they possibly will threaten his right flank, why does he not come this way and head around Wellington's position? Wellington is a defensive general a lot of the time. He's renowned for picking the right ground. He's also very good, and his generals, the French generals would have told him this, he's not used to fighting with the size of the armies that Napoleon fights with. So he will very much pick his ground. He'll pick and he will always try to pick the time of the ground. Sorry, I missed a thing. Did they have any form of aerial reconnaissance? You know, I think I've heard of something like that. They have had that. I'm not sure they used it here though, but they did have. Well, they had a form of aerial. Napoleon a lot of times had his troops and engineers build him a platform so he could look up, climb it and look out. I think there is an example of a balloon one, but I don't know. But they would definitely have engineers building platforms if they couldn't quite see. I don't think this happens here at Waterloo, but it did happen at the Battle of Ligny, I believe. So there, just before the Battle of Ligny, Napoleon is at a place called Fleurus, and he has a platform built there to have a look. But I'm not sure if they would use balloons. And I'm not sure if Napoleon would go up in one for a start. But I will check that out. I don't know that. If anybody else does know that, please bung it an answer in the comments below. Thank you, Aurel42, for that. So yeah, so why doesn't he outflank him? Well, if he knows Wellington is a defensive general and he picks his ground, then you want to make sure that he's not. You attack him where he doesn't want to be attacked. And a flanking maneuver would probably, a younger Napoleon maybe would have attempted to do it. It would have meant riding, maneuvering his army across the front of the British. But Napoleon was very good at doing this thing where he would pin an army back. So he could easily have used like de Erlon's corps to keep the British up here on this ridge here, and then move Rail and the reserve Lobau's corps this way around and come up this way to the left-hand side. And you know that Wellington was concerned about that because he had placed 17,000 troops essentially over in this area for specifically that purpose. And this is 17,000 troops. This is and not an insignificant amount of Wellington's army. It's believed that they were over here. There was an element in Brainload, but over here at Hal and Tabriz, this is where 17,000 odd troops have been posted. So what I'm trying to say is that why, if Napoleon is here and he thinks he's being threatened by the Prussians from this direction, and Napoleon has chosen his battlefield here, why has he not just gone around this way to Braine-l'Alleud? Is it because of this river? Is it because there's lack of crossing points? It could be that. That river may be the reason why. Again, anyone got any thoughts on that? Feel free to put it in the comments below. So what I'm saying is basically the frontal attack is what Wellington is preparing for at the moment. And if the French army are better at maneuvers, then outmaneuvering an army that even Wellington himself is not happy with, doesn't trust, would be possible. Like I say, with Wellington as well, he's more used to fighting with these smaller troops. And you saw about his philosophy of fighting when he was talking to Uxbridge in the evening before, that he doesn't know Napoleon's plan, so he doesn't know what to do. And that just shows you that he had a smaller army. He was therefore more in contact with his army. He was up front with his army. He would adapt to what was going on in front of him, and it's very much a sort of peninsular war kind of tactic, and it's one that we're going to go and look at the Peninsular War. We'll follow Wellington's journey through Portugal and Spain. And so in a certain sense then what you've got is Napoleon, by attacking this position here, is actually falling into Wellington's trap. Wellington has always fought on his terms, or tried to fight on his terms. That's why he didn't like Quatre Bras. He didn't want to commit his troops forward there. It wasn't on his terms. It wasn't on his timing. He needed to have a place where it was on his terms and his timing. One of the criticism that Wellington does get, though, is that this 17,000 troops that he has positioned over here on his right flank are completely wasted. There was a guy, he argues, what's his name? His name was a guy called historian called Kennedy. He writes that it's difficult to comprehend how. This is a quote, by the way. It's difficult to comprehend how any French force could have got to Tabriz and Hal, which are these two places over here, without its advance being previously known. So he's basically saying these troops that Wellington have over here are wasted, and they should have been brought back across. I mean, it's 17,000 troops. You know, that's quite a lot when you've only got 80,000 on the battlefield itself. And you could argue, and people have argued, that if Wellington had been defeated, the fact that he leaves 1/5 of his army over here on his right flank, not being part of the campaign, would have been seen as the same mistake that Napoleon has done by leaving Grouchy's men, 30,000 men, over on his on Napoleon's right flank. Just a quick note as well about the 10th Brigade. They were actually lying at a place at Ghent. This guy is so Ghent is up here. This is the 10th Brigade. They were essentially a big element of his Peninsular Army who had arrived, and they arrived from Ostend, and were just getting to the field of operations around this time. They were ordered from Ghent at around on the 17th, and they managed to get to the village of Waterloo around about 10 o'clock in the morning on the 18th. And these were this is from a letter by Sir John Lambert. So this is the only part of the American army that had managed to get back in time for the Battle of Waterloo. So they were kind of up here protecting the royal family, the French royal family. And just interesting little tidbit there. They describe, by the way, the journey that they had to take, and there's a guy, Lieutenant Drew. He was part of this brigade. He describes that they were occupied some time in clearing the road of provision carts containing bread, forage, and spirits that had been left on the road by the locals. So there's all the roads are sort of clogged up on the way here. 11 o'clock then, on the 18th. The messages arrived from Grouchy, and this basically said to Napoleon that all my reports, and I quote this as, "Sire, all my reports and information confirm that the enemy is retiring upon Brussels, either to concentrate there or to give battle after uniting with Wellington. They must have started from Turin yesterday evening at 8:30 and have marched all night. Fortunately, the weather in the night was so wretched that they couldn't have advanced far. I'm going to start immediately for Sarthe-à-Walhain. Hence, I shall proceed to Corbeil and Wavre." So that is Grouchy's message that Napoleon had received in the morning, and the one we heard Napoleon write back to with this sort of waffly message saying, follow them, but come close to me, but follow them. And so what that suggests then, so he's here at Sa-le-Warhain, and he says he's going to proceed via Corbeil, which is this place here, towards Wavre. The message back to Grouchy basically says the same thing. Do that, doesn't it? It says follow them, go that way. It doesn't mention at all. No, don't. When you get to Corbeil, why don't you go left to Côte Saint-Etienne, and then through Keru, and eventually up to Lasnay. Why don't you do that? Because if you did that and you then met the Prussians here at Lasnay, you would then be better impacting the battlefield for me than if you just went up to Wavre and fought the rearguard action up there. That should have been the order. That should have been, don't go to Wavre, don't bother following them, cut across here. Why does he not do that? Why does he not come through this area here and ordered him to Chapelle Saint-Lambert here? Regardless of whether Grouchy should have marched to the sound of the guns, forget about that. The order should have been, get yourself to Lasnay. And it's kind of crazy. The reply back was like, follow them to Wavre, but be in contact with me. You can't do both. So people argue that it was all Grouchy's fault. That there, to me, is exactly the one point when Napoleon should have done the correct thing and ordered Grouchy straight towards him there, but he doesn't. And that is essentially the point where Napoleon will lose this battle, because even if he gets onto the top of this ridge and forces Wellington back, say he wins this ridge, the British Anglo-Dutch army will probably stream back through the woods. He's still got a Prussian army, 3 corps of Prussian army coming up this ridge on his flank, and he'll be in a weakened position at the same time up here. So it doesn't make much sense to me. Anyway. Yeah, because the thing is with that dispatch from Grouchy, it's saying it should ring alarm bells. It's saying like the Prussians are at Wavre. There's no point anymore in following them because you're only going to be behind them. Get in front of them, cut across. Okay. So what do we got then in terms of an army? Napoleon's believed to have something in the region of 75,000 men, probably 246 guns, so he's outgunning Wellington. He has a slight numerical advantage over in terms of troops over Wellington. Well, I did say Wellington had 80,000, but I think we have to discount the 17,000 that was over at Hull. He needs to be energetic at this point. He needs to be on the front foot if he's going to succeed, but he doesn't. And this is around about in the morning. There seems to be not much action happening. The army's cooking soup and all this sort of stuff. just to go back to the breakfast that he has with his his generals, and there's the whole conversation supposed to be he's believed to be with Sue, Bassano, Drouet, and Rail will come in as well, and Napoleon is irritated. He's saying that just because you've been beaten and all that sort of stuff, he's not a good general. Rail enters the room, I believe, this time, and it's believed he's asked by Napoleon his opinion on Wellington, and he replies back saying, well posted as Wellington knows how to post it, and attacked from the front. The English infantry are unshakable, and before attacking it with the bayonet you may expect to have the attackers brought to the ground. But the English army is less agile, less supple, less expert in manoeuvring than ours, and if we cannot beat it by direct attack, we can do so by manoeuvring. So he's saying there, there's some strengths to these British infantry, and you might want to reconsider the strengths of the French army by manoeuvring. But we get the sense that Napoleon is irritated by this, and he just brings the conversation to a stop. So it sounds like Napoleon's just tired at this moment, and this is why we've been doing this for so long. This whole journey that we've been doing with the helicopter, looking at the distances. He's been in the saddle now for 3 days. I think he's just tired, and he just wants to get on with him. So the meeting breaks up, and Sue will write a dispatch to Grouchy, and he says, the Emperor directs me to inform you that at this moment His Majesty is about to attack the English army, which has taken up a position at Waterloo. There's another rumour as well, which before we start, is Jerome, who's Napoleon's brother, Jerome Bonaparte, who will be in charge of the attack on this side here, Hougoumont, stayed at the same place Wellington stayed at in Genappe. I think it was called something like L'Espagne. I think that's the name of the place anyway. And he is rumoured to have heard that the waiter there had overheard the conversation that Wellington had, or one of Wellington's aides-de-camp had, which revealed that Wellington was expecting Blucher to join forces with Wellington up here on this day. So it's not like they're not aware of this, what that could happen. But again, it's believed Napoleon refuses to believe this. All right, we're coming up on 2 hours and 30 minutes. The time, well, some of the reports say it's 12 o'clock. I think it depends on what who you listen to. But the first gun is fired at around about midday. Sometimes there's reports of it being around about 11 o'clock, but I think it depends on which time you're using. And so the Battle of Waterloo begins. The Emperor is ordering his guns. There's 80 guns amassed on the right-hand side of the La Belle Alliance, and they are to open up to commence the battle. And this so the 80 guns lined up to the right of La Belle Alliance. So we're looking probably along this ridge here. So you'd pull your cannon along here, and then all along this ridge around it down here, likely to be cannon. 80 cannon. This is where de Erlon's corps is also positioned. And the first attack by infantry is on the left-hand side. So over here we have rail, and the attack it was to head towards Hougoumont. And we'll leave that there for today. The first gun is fired, but you can see what Napoleon's intentions are. He's going to attack each side, and his intention is to draw as many reserves as possible from the center of the British line. So an attack will go in over there, and then we'll have an attack up this slope here, pressurizing the right-hand side, the right flank, coming up this way. And his intention is just to put pressure on Wellington, force him to move reserves to his flanks. And of course, we have Blucher, who is coming across from Wavre. Now, remember, he's got a very brave move, because if he thinks he's being chased by a significant force in Grouchy, and Grouchy does. Say Grouchy had done what we said and come across to here, using these roads to cut him off. He's actually now will be maneuvering his army across the face of Grouchy, but Grouchy doesn't do that. But we've got then the whole army, well, 3 corps of the army will be marching from Wavre here in this direction. So it becomes a race. Can Napoleon take out the position at Mont-Saint-Jean before the build-up of Prussian troops from this side gets too much? And we shall find out in the next thrilling installment. And tomorrow, I think tomorrow, probably around about midday UK time, we'll have a look at that, and we'll look at the actual battle itself. Sorry it's taken so long to get here. It's I know it's a bit of a waffle, but I get distracted sometimes. Hope you've enjoyed it though, and if you have, please leave it a like and a subscribe or a follow. As I say, the follower count is around about 75 now. For some reason it wants me to get to 80. I don't know why. I don't know if that matters at all. But that would be cool. It encourages me to carry on. It's always good to see new people. Love to see the fact that 3 people subscribed on YouTube. I hope that means that you are inspired by what you see. You can see the improvements. I am going to try and improve. I am going to try and get better. But I like not editing stuff. It's nice to sort of fly live, so you can see that it's live. We're finding out things together, and you know, we can go and explore this virtual world together. Right, so tomorrow then, or in the next one, if you're on YouTube, we will be looking at the actual battle itself, and I'm going to try and run through that pretty quickly, just to speed things along, trying to keep it a little bit more of the maneuvering side, the strategic side, rather than the actual tactics. And we've seen a lot of the battlefield already, but we'll run through a quick sequence of the events. Probably take one stream of doing that, and then we will then look at the Battle of Wavre. We'll look at the eventual chase of the French army back towards Paris. Hopefully that means we will get this wrapped up by the end of this month. Okay, I will say thank you for watching. Good to see you, and waffle too much. I'm going. Bye.